Hello, and welcome to our next episode of the Hub at Path Superstar Series podcast, where we get to highlight amazing individuals working in the Fedcap Employment Services Network. It's a boots-on-the-ground look at the everyday hero. It's our love letter from the front line to the front line, and it starts right now. So what makes a superstar?
A superstar is someone who may not have had the straightest line in their career path, somebody who has transferable skills, and somebody that wants to help people.
Organization, interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, knowledge of employer resources, and employer relations. If you have 3 of these, you're good. If you have 4, you're great. If you have 5, well, that makes you a superstar.
Who is a go-getter and has a creative mindset, a strategic thinker, and just wants to help people.
For me, it's heart and grit.
I think for me, just being there, being an active listener, allowing the process. I also think that it is a joint effort, that we are a team to move forward with the clients, helping them and guiding them, but also listening and actively listening to goal setting. I think just being a really good active listener is, I think, step 1 in this field.
Our guest today is Kim Lockhart from YMCA Niagara. Kim, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I guess we'll start right at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about how you got to this current position that you're in and what that journey looked like for you.
Sure, thanks. Actually, I've been in Y Services at the YMCA in employment for 7 years. Previous to that, I worked in social work for almost 17 years. And interesting fact, I actually was a client before I worked here. 7 years ago, I guess, I left my last job. My son was sick, and I was hard balancing work and being at sick kids. So I ended up taking a leave. And during that leave, we made some changes in life decisions and started looking for something different. And I happened to run into a friend of mine who years ago went to high school with, a very long time ago. She said, "Why don't you come see me at my office?" And I'm like, "What office? Like, what do you do?" For me, growing up in Welland, the why was working out. Didn't realize that there was employment services or any service providers that matter in terms of helping participants look for work. Really, my understanding at that time was just temporary service agencies of like going into Manpower, Kelly Services, kind of quick, easy jobs, quick 1 to 2 days. That was what my understanding was growing up in Welland. That was what my, with employment. So when I was able to go to that service provider, I got to learn a whole new world with employment, and coming from a client and being able to obtain my work and join the YMCA team has been a great journey for me. Was a learning process from the time leaving my last job and coming here, but this last 7 years has been a journey on its own. Coming from social work and working in, kind of very high-risk situations, still dealing and working with people, just in a very different capacity. So that's what brought me here today.
That's so amazing. I mean, I've had these conversations before, and I always feel like there's something different or special about an employment service worker who has been on the other side. And I think that that's amazing. So what is your current title?
So I'm an employment coach / team lead. So
Okay.
The Y had brought in a team lead about 6 to 8 months ago, just to help service within our 3 offices and our 3 sites. Yeah.
So you're located mostly in Niagara Falls?
I'm in Niagara Falls. I'm at the Niagara Falls location on Lundy's Lane.
Cool.
Yeah. Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
So we're going to start right in. What motivates you to come into work every day in and out with your clients?
Honestly, my clients. Every day is a different day. Every client's a different journey. Everybody's story is different, just like mine. And I think in my head, being a good employment coach or being a good person is really just being in the moment. Everybody comes, we may have a plan, and as my plans shifted, our participants that we work with, their plans can shift, and we have to go with them. So it's not a direct path from A to B, and just being able there to support them in that moment, whether it's helping them prep for an interview, whether them listening to, they just lost their job, how do you help them? But the motivation is also my staff, the people that I work with. I love my staff I work with at the Y and all the partners that we're able to bring into our office to help support our clients, not just to find a job.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? What do you mean about, I think what you're talking about is like wraparound services.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So we have wraparound services. We actually have quite a few unique programs at the Y. So we have our ACE program, which is Accelerated Career Exploration. So they do help support our internationally trained professionals getting into their WES assessments, but also creating, which is a bigger portion of what they do, is career mapping. So helping participants based on their current experience and their education from whatever country they came from and whatever experience they have, what could they potentially do, or what was a similar role they could do here in Canada? And then maybe looking at possible bridging programs that might be maybe a little short cost or a little course, but then also if they want to go back into their field, this is what you have to do. So it's really helping them create short-term and long-term goals.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of that before, where they I know I've worked with people who take a look at previous experience and see if they could maybe find something that they could get accredited in faster at like a lower level. Yeah. But I don't think I've ever seen that full circle of like if you wanted to get back to that higher designation.
Yes.
This is still the pathway.
This is your pathway, and helping them and supporting them through that process, because as we know, even the internet alone is very overwhelming. And there's so many things that are different courses and different things. And so having somebody with you to support you step by step with that journey is very helpful to, even if that long-term goal is 4 years away, it's how do I get there?
That is really
So that's
cool.
just one of our programs that we have.
that.
So yeah, that's what helped.
Can you tell me a little bit about someone that you've helped that is sort of one of those stories that stays with you, like a client story?
Well, I thought about this question. I have a few different stories but one keeps popping up and the reason why it's kind of fresh. It's one of my newer participants that I worked with, came in from another country, newcomer to our services. He was connected to our CLARS assessment, had quite a high level English, which was fantastic, and being able to support him in looking for employment somewhat in occurring towards his field. We also got him connected with our ACE program, as well as potentially looking at Contact North to see if there are any courses or upgrading he could do. But in the meantime, while I was completing his resume, so his background is aeronautical engineering. So didn't know, had to do a little bit of research about 100% what that looked like. And like a lot of our newcomers, resume was very needed a lot of updates. And I think some of what we really can do is help our clients find their skills. And not their skills from their jobs that they did, but the skills that they have as a person. Their experiences, their skills, what do they have to offer that employer? So those transferable skills, which is a big part of what we do when we work with our newcomers. Often our resumes we see are very connected to the jobs and the duties we've done, as opposed to looking at our soft skills and our transferable skills and what things we can do as a worker and as a person, not just the job we left. And so as we created his resume, one of our Contact North contact person happened to be in the office, and I was doing a resume, and she's like, I was talking to her about the place we were going to apply, and it happened to be a friend of hers, and we were able to get a contact and the resume to that participant and being able to do an employer kind of connection, and he actually ended up working in his field at Niagara and under helicopters. So he's been able to, so it's not a perfect match, but it's a great start for him. And the best part about this story is we help support this client get a bike, because in Niagara Falls, we have a number of different buses that run in our, and they don't always run, and especially don't run on Sundays. And this participant is working all hours, and we were able to support him with a bike. And when we were able to connect to get his bike, I've never seen a bigger smile on a person. and he loves everything about his job. He was so happy, and he would work 24 hours a day if he could. And that for me, A, helps me come back to my job every time, and B, why his story stays with me.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's so cool.
Yeah.
I have a few follow-up questions because I think that's an amazing story.
Yes.
Number one, how did you, when you see an international resume,
Yes.
where do you start? Because it looks much different
Much,
to the
much
ones
different.
that we're thinking of, like traditionally seeing people walk in the door.
So the first thing is we kind of go through the resume. We talk a little bit about, tell me about your job. What did you do? If it's, whether it's mechanical engineer or civil engineer, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know anything about those things. So I really get them to talk about what they did on their job. What were they actually doing? Then we start to break down the dates. We start to put it in the right chronological order, looking at whether they're looking for a complete career shift, which would be more of a functional, or are we keeping with the chronological? They've had gaps in their employment. And then starting to really just go down to the basics at the beginning. And then really as they start looking and processing, while they're working with myself one-to-one or with other departments and programs that we have, or as they're learning their journey on their own, as we have a direction of where we're going, we really do help them try to gear and tailor those resumes towards the jobs that they're looking for. But it really is starting at the beginning, giving them a resume template, giving them kind of the layout that we're kind of looking for, and really helping them do it. So it's not me doing it for them. We really work on it together, because the more they learn and the skills they have, they're going to have those skills to tailor their resume for future job opportunities that they want to work with.
And I have also noticed there's some things included on an international resume
Yes.
that we wouldn't necessarily have in a Canadian job market. So I'm wondering, how do you have those conversations around, like, we're probably going to take off your like rating scales? Do you ever see the ones with the rating scales?
Yes. We've actually seen ones. I've seen dowries. I've seen their SIN card numbers, their spouse's names, date of birth. So we do talk about some of those things, and we talk about, usually I ask them first, why is this on here? How was this created? What is the purpose of this? And then we talk about a little bit about why some of those things are not necessarily here. Sometimes we can look at discrimination, age discrimination or et cetera, that a lot of this stuff here is not meant for an employer to know right away when you're applying for a job. SIN card, of course, once you obtain the job, they need it in order to pay you. But it's really talking about right from the start to the end, not just their resume, even, your SIN card, what is the purpose? Taxes is a big thing sometimes we run into when our participants do get a job. They'll go, what happened to the rest of my paycheck? So we really talk about all those things that are very new, that not to say that we take for granted, but we're very familiarized with. And so when you're working with newcomers, it's a great opportunity to really learn from them about what they did in their home country, and really learn about them and their culture and their background. And every participant I work with, I learn from. I really, really do. And they all have their own unique and amazing story. And it's how do we help support them continue that journey? And then just really talk to them about, what to expect, employer expectations. And that starts right from the resume. What the purposeful. We talk about what each line in your resume is purposeful for. Every line in there, you should understand, what is it there for? Is there a reason for it? And then really kind of, so that they're learning as well what to expect on their resume.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I feel like that is like so much knowledge that they'll have for the rest of their journey in Canada.
Yes.
And that's not necessarily at the forefront of what you're thinking about when you're going through those exercises.
Yes.
But to sort of zoom out, it really makes the work very powerful.
Yes.
That's so cool.
And it's empowering them, right? If we do it all for them, then it's me providing all the information. I put their name on the top, but we do it together so that they're part of that journey. That resume is a part of them.
Yeah, that's so good. And then the second part from that story that I'm so interested in, because I feel like you've touched on like the je ne sais quoi, or like you've touched on something that people really struggle to do in the network, which is how do you sort of dip into the hidden job market using your connections?
Yep.
In a very professional, sort of natural way. Like the fact that your wraparound supports just so happen to be there is a bit of luck, sure.
A happenstance,
yeah,
of course. Yep.
But how do you like build these relationships not knowing if they would ever be like useful in that particular way? but just like maintaining that professional relationship building constantly, because you can get a little bit like, oh yeah, these people never call us back, we'll just do it on our own. Like, what is the sense of community that you guys use at YMCA that makes it so successful?
So I think it's really starting about building employer relations too. I mean, this one's kind of a one-off. It just happened to happen, and we sent off just a really great resume, and it was right to the HR person. So it wasn't a backdoor kind of way in. Although the introduction I was able to get the information, and it was a great story. It ended up successful. But for the most part, it's really just touching base with the employers, building relations. The Y has been in Niagara Falls for 7 years, and I know previously years ago they were as well. But really building the relationship, not necessarily for the client right off the bat, but really building that relationship. This is what the Y does. This is what we do. This is how we support. And that can help build advocacy for not only newcomers, but participants who may have challenges, or, how do we help support them and advocate for them, and looking for their strengths. And building, all the wonderful things that come with a newcomer. And I think a lot of employers sometimes can miss is you're building not just diversity, but creative ways, new ideas to old problems. They're coming with amazing experience and skills that I think sometimes employers can miss because they're a newcomer or they don't have Canadian experience, where they really can bring new ideas and, new problems and new creativity and a different learning curve within your own company. And we've seen success from that, from some of the companies that we've worked with, to really, take a jump and a leap by hiring a newcomer and really having fantastic results with that. And so but you have to believe it, and you have to love it, and you have to really, it's not selling that. It's really, you are speaking with an employer in a whole about really. It really is amazing. Every time I meet with a participant, it blows my mind about their experience. And often they'll tell me what their job title is, and I have no idea, because it may not be something that is the same job title here. And so it's learning that pathway too with them. What might be your job title there may not be here. So it's a lot of research and trying to figure those pieces out. But their journeys are amazing, just like your person. And your journey is important. And how do we help support them in that journey, whether it's today, tomorrow, or for their future?
That's so cool. Thank you. Sorry. We can cut this out. Tell me about a challenge or a time where something maybe didn't go 100% your way, and how you sort of wound through that, or what would you change about maybe a situation or your role in general?
I think in a general perspective, COVID really changed the way we brought services in. We were home for 2 years. I am not, and I'm very clear, I'm not a very technical sound person. I'm a pen and paper, old school. So it was a challenge for me to learn different systems and learn, but I took on a challenge during COVID. We were able to build some workshops in, and that was hard trying to usually our workshops were connected, facilitating in person, and trying to, instead of a 2-hour workshop, how do you bring that down to a 20-minute or half an hour workshop where somebody's actually going to hopefully stick around online? So that was a challenge. And now we're trying to, as we've been back in the offices and as our, not our participants, but sometimes they shift. How do we help support that? And it's a consistent adapting to who we're working with, what our current population is. So for me, I think a challenge was, being really adaptable and really being able to look at, what is the pattern here? What are we missing? How can we support? So it's how do we shift those workshops that may have helped participants 5 years ago? How do we shift it into working with the participants that we're working with today? So it was a challenge, but it was a good challenge. And for me to be able to help use that on PowerPoint was a big challenge for me, because I would rather have somebody else do it and I'll present. But I really took on that challenge to try to figure out how to do those things online. And you learn. I mean, I think in the last 6 months of us doing workshops, we do ask for feedback, what worked, what didn't. And it's being, open-minded to take, this really didn't understand for us and I'm not sure. And so we take it out or we change it or we manipulate it to make it work. But it is challenging. We get a lot of participants coming in a high volume, and how do we support those things? So workshops have been a really good option to be able to bring people in to learn in a large group.
Yeah.
So that's been it's been a challenge because it's different. Our setting looks different than it did 5 years ago, but it's a good challenge, and I'm kind of proud of myself that I took that on because I'm not a very tech savvy person. So
I think that's amazing. What's the difference between a group in front of you in real life and a group online?
So I'm a very animated person. So I feel that like when you're in person, you can get a little bit more engaged with them. They're a little bit more participatory. They're a little bit more. So when you're online, you have to get creative to do kind of activities. You kind of got to, but you also have to recognize that not everybody's comfortable on screen. So you may have a group of participants who are listening, you're hoping are listening, but aren't necessarily reciprocating. So sometimes that's the challenge, but at least hopefully in person, they're a little bit more, even if they're connecting with each other, for me, that's a positive. So even if they're talking, if they find, what we find with the groups too is the same groups will come back for other groups, and then they end up building friendships and a support group within those groups. So that's another extra bonus on top of just here's some information. But it was a challenge.
I feel that.
Yes.
I got to tell you, sometimes I feel like I'm just speaking into the ether, and I wonder who's on the other end. And I guess in this format, we're very similar in that we aren't able to have that discourse, but you've just given me a really great idea. Jot this down, Kevin. We'll do a reunion at the end of all of the podcast series and a panel interview where people can ask questions. I think that would be really cool. Yeah. So I have 2 more questions for you. You've been so wonderful.
Oh, thanks.
I'd love to hear your proudest moment in employment services. Okay. And then I have one fun one for the end.
Okay. My proudest moment. Oh, that's a tough one. I've been able to obtain the team lead role. I mean, it was this was just the last 6 months. So I'm very proud of that moment. But I'm really proud of just putting myself into unfamiliar territory like today. But, previous in my last role, I was working really one-to-one. I was working in more professional departments and professional and working in employment. You are working in professional, but your clients are coming in and your participants that you're working with. And I was really took some leaps of faith, and I volunteered to do the Smart Surf facilitation back in the day when it was in person. I did train the trainer for that in food safety. Just truth be told, I've never worked in a restaurant before. I do have all the training and certificates, but I don't. And I really took on the challenge to build workshops and facilitate, and I really like doing it now. And it was something that 7 years ago, I would have probably walked this way directly away from. And I'm super proud that I jumped in on that first opportunity. Instead of walking away, I kind of volunteered a little bit hesitant, but now I'm building workshops, I'm facilitating workshops online, and in person. And I really, really love it. And it's something that I would have never guessed that this is where I would be.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, to finish it off, I have a bit of a self-serving question.
Okay.
I'm a big fan of a pump-up jam.
Okay.
And so if you could imagine that you were a WWE wrestler,
okay,
what would your intro song be?
Well, I would probably switch the sport to hockey.
Fair.
Because I play hockey and not really a wrestling fan. I probably would put out Thunderstruck AC/DC.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right.